So I have mismatched wheels right now, right? So I was cycling through Rotterdam last year, and it was like a Friday evening, mid-November, and it was rush hour. So like, when it's like rush hour, say in Montreal or something like that with drivers, the Netherlands is like that, but with cyclists. So like there's all the, you probably know, right? So there's all these brilliant like signposts and separate lane dividers and things for all the cyclists. But it was lashing rain, and everyone is like, rammed up at the stop sign or at the stoplight, waiting for our light to change. And then everyone just goes, and it's all these bicycles, and like half the time I'm getting people's like bags caught on my handlebars and the loops of the handles and things. A whole mess. Anyway, I was going to meet my warm showers host, and I was wanting to like pull off the road up onto the path, and I couldn't see because the edge of the curb was submerged with the water, and I just hit the curb. I think I hit a drain or something at the wrong angle, and I completely fell over, skidded off the bike. In the morning when we went to cycle away, there was this like grinding sound happening in my front handlebars, and I couldn't see any damage at all. So we just went into a bike shop, and sure enough, I had broken my hub.
Oh, Stella.
Hello and welcome. My name is George Lackegg, and today I have a special guest with me. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is 0Stella. I'm an alternative rock musician from Edmonton.
Your name, 0Stella. How did you come to use that name? And there's some different way of spelling it too that I gathered.
It's true. I'm a big fan of bands from the 90s, especially bands that have like one word for their name. So like Soundgarden and Garbage and all that kind of stuff. So I really liked that idea. And I went through a load of different names, and I finally settled on this one because it was a PJ Harvey song title. I'm a big PJ Harvey fan. It was O Stella, like O-H, Stella, O comma. But I decided to turn it into one word. The spelling was already taken for the .com, super boring aspect of it. So I just changed it into a zero. That was around 2018, and I had just started really leaning into kind of a zero waste lifestyle at that point. So it all just seemed to make perfect sense together. So 0Stella is what it became. You spell it with a zero, you say 0Stella. Yeah, it's thoroughly complicated.
Yeah, I like that. The idea of zero waste. Yeah, tell us a bit about your musical journey.
It's been really varied and long. I started in Dublin growing up. I was in a bunch of bands there, and eventually moved over to Canada, was based in Ontario for a few years, and then moved over to Alberta in 2011 and had a band in Calgary at that point, and we were doing pretty well. We played South by Southwest and had a couple of releases. And then I decided, I actually got rear-ended by a drunk driver one night, and I was driving a little, no, in my car, but I was in a little VW Golf, and the minivan that went into me at 60 kilometers an hour sent me into the back of a small truck in front of me, and my bonnet went under the bed of the truck, so it didn't crumple properly, so my airbag never deployed. So I got my steering wheel to my chin, and it set off a load of essentially injuries around my voice box and stuff like that, which caused a lot of pain and inability to sleep and stuff like that. So long story short, I ended up sending myself up to Edmonton to Grant MacEwan University to study jazz and to fix my voice. And I just landed on my feet up here. I love this city so much, and I've been doing music officially as 0Stella since 2019.
You know, we have that in common actually, because me too, I was in Ontario for a long time, and then I ended up here. And at first, my first week in Edmonton, to be honest, I thought, oh, this town's kind of goofy. But then I got a job here, which was sort of like I was trying, but it wasn't really that expected. And I ended up staying, and was the best thing.
Amazing.
I really like it here, except I'm not very tough to stay here through the winter.
Oh, you're a snowbird, are you?
Well, it's cold here in the winter.
It sure
And,
is.
yeah, the other thing we have in common is the cycling across Canada. And, well, I gotta ask you some things about that because, like, I know you tour with... It's gotta weigh a ton if you have concert equipment on
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And there's mountains.
There's so many mountains and they're so tall and steep. I think at its heaviest it was 192 pounds, the whole thing. And I'm 124.
So we're talking way over 300 pounds of
Resistance.
The most I ever packed on this bike was probably 60 pounds, and maybe it weighs 30.
That sounds like such a holiday. Wow.
You know,
Amazing.
yeah, the mountains.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Yeah. Well, I burnt out a gear shifter cable within my first 500 kilometers of that cycle coming out of Vancouver because, I hadn't figured out a smooth gearing transition up those hills, and anytime you're exhausted you stop and you're already in your easiest gear at that point, so then all this tension on your chain, and I burnt through it so
You
fast.
ever have a moment where you just had to walk the bike and push it?
One or two, when my GPS sent me the wrong way. Not the wrong way, but it kept trying to offer shortcuts, like especially when you're going up the Anarchist coming out of Osoyoos. It's a big, long, winding road up the side of a mountain, and so my GPS kept saying, well, look, just take this like shortcut up this road, this little residential road. But all of those like hairpins were so much more steep with their percentage grade that yes, I ended up having to just abandon ship and push it up. And by the time I got up there, I was so angry at the GPS. I stopped taking its suggestions after that mostly.
I can understand.
Yeah.
I remember some hills, and this wasn't even in Canada, but I went through Guatemala once, and well, like I said, there was never more than 60 pounds of luggage on this bike. But when I had to push it, I had to have my hands on the brakes.
Oh.
Because it would go backwards if I didn't.
Right.
You have to actually lean in a weird way just to distribute the weight properly.
Yeah, and it wrecks your shoulders too, right?
So,
and yeah.
That's in a way, I find it's a brilliant idea to use your bicycle for the concert tour.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you probably know more than anybody that there are some drawbacks to that, and I wonder what inspired you to start doing that. And like, obviously you're still doing it, so have you learned a lot since you started, and were there things that you really didn't expect to turn out the way they did?
Buckets. I've learned so much. Okay, well, to answer your question, what started me doing it, I come from a family of cyclists anyway, and my brother and my dad and I have always done like long distance cycling, and my brother's the real cyclist in the family. He just finished like Marmot in the Alps last 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
He did like a 5,000 meter elevation climb over like 177 kilometers, just bonkers stuff. But we've always been growing up doing like long distance cycles and things, and we did a 2-week thing through Argentina as well. But these were all supported cycles, like you have your crew going with you. And then coming out of the pandemic, I had just finished this record, Pendulum State, and I needed to tour it, but because of the lockdown, like everyone was trying to get back doing their tours, so they would set up a tour, and then the venues would have to shut down again, and so it was this stop go kind of momentum through 2021 that I really just didn't want to have any part in. It seemed pointless to me. And on top of that then, like, I didn't love how musicians were being shoehorned into a position of saying, yes, you can come to my show, but you cannot, with all of the business going on through COVID. I just didn't want any part of that, because to me, and another reason that 0 is in my name is it's super nerdy, but like 0 is the center point of the X and Y axis, right? So it's like the center of everything. So to me, music should be that, like, it should have a gravity to it and be pulling people in instead of sending people away, and, you know, making people enemies, really. So I wanted to focus on the unity side of music instead of dividing people. So again, that's where the 0 came from. So then I had like a few options on how to tour, and a few of them involved like via rail or a touring van that someone we know had, and he had bought it from a band that lived down in Austin, I think, and they had converted the roof to a stage. So they just drove around and set up and did their show on their stage, on their roof. And I was like, oh, that's deadly. So I had notions I might just get that and do Canada that way and bring the bike with me for short parts. But everything kept falling apart in 21 because of the pandemic, and the only thing left was the only thing left was my bicycle, really, and I needed to go. So I was sick of waiting for people to go along with me, so I just went for it. So I spent a year, 2021, researching bike touring because I'd never done it before, researching guitars. I settled on a carbon fiber guitar because it was lightweight and not wood, so it wouldn't react to all of the different types of weather that I would have, even the blistering hot heat that would split your wood and all kinds of things. So yeah, lots of research for a year, and then just hit the road in spring 22.
Do you tour by yourself on the bike?
Yeah.
I've been asked to ask you this. Do you have fears when you tour by yourself, and how do you deal with them? Because a lot of women won't do that, what you do.
Yeah.
And I can even understand as a guy, I mean, you never know where you end up, and sometimes you end up camping somewhere where you probably shouldn't. And I mean, you probably have experiences like that. And
I do. I do.
Maybe you want to share one.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the biggest peacekeepers for me with my family, because they were only used to us doing supported tours. So I got a Garmin satellite phone with an SOS button on it to keep everyone happy, and then that sends out like 10-minute increment signals through the satellite, so all my family on the contact list can see where I am. So if I don't check in at a checkpoint, they can actually track my whereabouts, so that's good. I have bear spray, I have an air horn. There's been run-ins with humans, there's been run-ins with bears, there's been run-ins with farm dogs. The scariest thing of all has been probably the bear that I met on the trail out in New Brunswick following Hurricane Fiona. And I was going down this cycle trail through mountains, and there was, not mountains, through like a little forest, and there was lots of felled trees. They were quite small, they were like saplings to begin with, so I was like, oh, that's fine, I'll continue on. And I had like a fold up like saw with me for just in case. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll just help out the cycling community in the neighborhood, and I'll just clear some trees out of the cycle path and I'll keep going. But the trees kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and at one point they were like full on like evergreen trees down, and I was like at one point I had to roll my bike underneath the trunk, and I could just clear it because of the branches, and I had just come out of the largest one I'd gotten through so far, and there was a big long straight stretch of path. I was like, oh, thank goodness. And then I looked up along the path, and there was like a black something walking down the path at me, and for a minute I thought it was like a black farm cat or something like that, and then when I looked closer it was a bear coming straight for me. And I had just been in a city the day or two before, and I know like you weren't staying long in most places when you were stopped. You were like trying to stop for like what, 4 days or so when you were doing your tour?
Not even.
Okay.
I was 100 days the whole tour. The longest stay was at the house here in Edmonton, and it was only 4 days because a tree had fallen on our shed and we had to deal with that.
That's fair. That's a legit reason. But for me, because I was playing concerts all the way along, I was staying a minimum a week in every major city or town.
Smart.
So as a result, when you're hanging out in a city for a week or more, you feel like a bit of a fool going around with like a satellite phone and bear spray and an air horn strapped to your hip. So I'll take it off. And so I had forgotten to put it back on my hip, and there was the bear in my trail, and I knew it was tucked under a million different things strapped down to that bob trailer, And I knew the bear spray was at the bottom of that bob bag, way at the bottom, underneath all my groceries I just bought for myself. And I was filming on my GoPro at the same time with this little mouth mount. So I was like, there, bear, hey, bear. And I was like digging down deeper in my bag, trying to find my bear spray.
Did you post that somewhere?
I will eventually.
Something to see.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing because, like, you know how you can see the detail of something far away, but it doesn't always come out on camera. So, but anyway, It's fine. But yeah, lots of different things like that, and learning the wily ways of humans is a whole other thing as well. So lots of different things, but I mean, you just have to be smart about it, you know, and listen to your gut all the time.
I remember bears along the road, but thankfully they weren't interested in me. They always did their very own thing. And one time I was just coming around the curve, and basically where that tree is over there, yeah, the bear was just crossing the road, but he wasn't even looking at me.
Oh, I know. I was the same. I was in Sunshine Valley at the campground there, and same thing. I was on the phone to my mum one Sunday morning back in Ireland, walking through a field, and there, sure enough, is a bear just nibbling on the dandelions, because they're the first things they eat in the season, right? And I was terrified. I was like, Mum, I have to call you back, there's a bear. But anyway, sure, he wasn't bothered at all.
Like, how much planning do you do when you go on a big tour like that? I mean, especially Canada, it's a huge tour.
It never really feels like enough, to be honest. I did the year worth of prep and planning for the major Cross Canada tour. All in all, I was gone for 5.5 months. The difference too is that, like, because normally when I play music, it's in like a music venue, right? So you've got a booker or a promoter that you're working with. I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get across the country. So I didn't want to book all the shows 6 months out, because I didn't know if I'd have to like ring up the day before and be like, sorry, I won't make it, I'm still 3 cities away or something. So I waited until I was about 2 weeks away from every major town, and then I would start booking everything. So my day-to-day turned out to be cycling for 8 to 10 hours, and then get to a campsite and download whatever footage I had filmed on the GoPro. And then whenever I was in towns, that's why I needed to be there for so long too, was because I would take that time to book shows in the next town or whatever, catch up with social media. There was so much stuff going on in the background. I needed that extra time just to recoup physically and do the extra work.
Totally understand. Did you train a lot before the tour? Like, to get yourself physically up for it?
I did somewhat. The summer before 2021, I went out cycling again for the first time, long distance cycling in about 15 years. I hadn't really done long distance cycling since moving to Canada, because, like, you know, the difference, well, you're German, so they're still on the same side of the road as you, but like for Ireland, everything's on the other side of the road. Everything over here is enormous, right? Like everything, every car, every truck, it's just a bigger thing to get used to. And then when I was living in Ottawa, there was that story about the person that ran through the big group of cyclists at the bottom of the Gatineau Hills, not long after I got in there. So it really just turned me off. So
there are too many stories like that.
It's a lot.
There's a lady on YouTube, Anishka is her name, and she mentioned on one of her channels, one of her videos, I should say, that my videos actually inspired her to do her Cross Canada tour. And then on one of her episodes, she got hit by a car, and she ended up in the hospital.
Oh, I know.
You know
I know her. She saw okay, so I'll tell you this. So she and I had been following each other on Instagram because we were cycling across Canada at the same time, the same summer.
That's something. Eh?
And so we were talking to each other, asking about where to stay and all this kind of thing. And at one point, just west of Sudbury, we almost met, but it started raining, so she got to her host house first, so she pulled off the road. We would have met that day. And then about a week and a half later, I had gone from Sudbury, maybe 2 weeks later, Sudbury down through Manitoulin Island through Tobermory, and I was cycling around already through Toronto on the way out to perform a show at a house concert. And I got gravely ill. Like, I got heat exhaustion and food poisoning in the same go, and was cycling through one of the national parks out there, and the heat and humidity was so intense that day. I had an 80-kilometer cycle to do, and then I had to play a 2-hour show at the end of that. and I basically fell down and collapsed on the side of the road, and they had to call an ambulance. And as the paramedics were there treating me on the side of the road, Anishka just cycled by, and she was like, "Oh, Stella!" I'm like, "Wheels on a bike?" Because that's her channel. And she's like, "Yes." So she ran up the hill to meet me, and we had this like hysterical introduction of these two wacko women cycling across the country we'd never met before until that day with the
I find
paramedics.
there's always an instant connection when you're doing this, and I found out that there's on average about 300 people every summer that are cycling across Canada, and it just happens like sometimes you meet them. My tour went all the way to Newfoundland, and I met people on the ferry that came the same way. And it's like, hey, where you been all this time, you know?
Yeah.
But here we were like 5 or 6 people that all cycled the same way.
Yeah, totally.
More or less, you know.
Yeah, there's another guy, Nathan, that I met as well, and we kept leapfrogging each other across the country as well. He's got a great YouTube channel with all his footage too. Yeah, it's great that. Love that.
You mentioned Argentina. I have 2 people at least that are in Argentina, and they said, well, if you interview her, ask her about, like, they want to do the same thing you're doing.
Oh, okay.
And, like, do you have any tips for aspiring musicians who want to go on tour with, I mean, you already mentioned a lot, but is there anything that would be the key thing before you even get started?
House concerts are a great way to go. Warm showers, use warm showers to help you out along the way. Yeah, film everything and make your equipment setup as concise as you can possibly do. Like, I have just a guitar that sits on top of that trailer, and then some CDs, some stickers, some cables and some pedals in the back of the thing, plus show shoes, plus show clothes, plus. Like, it keeps going, you know? And it adds up really, really, really quickly. I would say, the biggest tip I would say as well is absolutely schedule yourself for arriving in your show city the day before your show. I've been caught out a couple of times having to do like that 80-kilometer cycle day of the show. Another day I did the rail trail down through Kelowna down to Penticton.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, and like that's
very rough.
yeah, and it's 6 hours of gripping your brakes. So when I played the show that night, I had no gripping power left to play my guitar. So again, I had to figure out a way around that. So there's so many things that you don't even expect to be an issue, but just go for it. Like, don't overplan either. Don't get paralyzed. Just go. Okay, one more tip for the Argentinian musicians wanting to do a cycle tour. Get in touch with me and we will do a reciprocal cycling album tour, one in Argentina and one in Canada.
You write your own music, right? Is that correct? When you're on the road by yourself for hours and hours, it sometimes changes your mental state. And would that have an influence on songs? And have you actually written songs as a result, like when you've been hours and hours on the road and maybe had time to think about something? Or is it just totally separated?
Yeah, it's I actually do a lot of strategic thinking. So I'll think up business ideas for, like, what way am I going to do the tour next year, or am I going to do this other thing, or think up ideas for grants and things like that, businessy stuff. In terms of music, then I kind of have like a jukebox brain though, so I'll have like a running list of songs that just show up in my head, other people's songs, and it's all like 80s and 90s. It's like there's an antenna in my head picking up like the most 80s music ever, like, so that'll kind of keep me entertained for another couple of hours, and then eventually like my own songwriting stuff will break through. So I have like all kinds of nuggets collected on my GoPro as video, and fewer on my voice memo notes on my phone, because it's just trickier to kind of pull out what you need and record it. But I know there's one musician from Halifax, Rich O'Coin, who did a cross Canada cycle as an album tour, and then a number of years later he went back and did it again deliberately to write an album. But he cycled like completely lightweight. His instrument was a laptop, so he didn't need a trailer for all his instruments, and he credit carded it along the way. So he did hotels, so he didn't need to camp. So it gave him a lot more mental space and time in his day to cycle from hotel to hotel, sit down, open the laptop and start making a demo out of all the ideas from that day. So yeah, like I'd love to do that eventually, but that's just not how it's occurred for me yet.
Well, tell us a bit about your upcoming tour and where you'll be, and perhaps even how people can catch up with you.
Sure, yeah. Well, this summer in September, I'm going to be going through Ontario. Only Ontario. I spent another... It's big. Yeah, I'm only spending like 10 days doing it. And last year, so 2022 was 5.5 months on the bike. And then last year, 23, was another 6 months away in Europe, doing cycling and stuff like that and touring the album. So this year I'm deliberately trying to take like smaller chunks. So this is going to be Ontario. You can follow me through socials, Instagram and TikTok at 0Stella Music.
I'm going to leave some links in the description for that.
Perfect.
So you can follow up on that.
But mainly my website, 0Stella.com, 0Stella.com. And I think I have a few openings.
Really pop in Google and it pops right up.
Yeah,
It's
pretty good, yeah. But yeah, I still have a few openings for house concerts, for people to host house concerts in Ontario at the moment. So if anyone's interested, you can drop me an email.
Cool. Jessica, you hear that? My daughter lives in Ontario.
Oh, nice.
So what can fans expect from your performances? Like say you do a house concert.
Oh man, well, there's definitely stories, stories about the road, and I do about 2 hours of music. It's broken up with a 15-minute interval, and it's majority of it is my own music from the Pendulum State album. It got broken into 2 mini albums. The first mini album was Freefall. It came out in 2022. That was the first album I was promoting with that Cross Canada cycle, and then 2023, while I was cycling through Europe, Skyward came out. So this next year in 2025, the full collection of songs is coming out. So funny. We'll edit him out. Yeah, so in 2025 then the full collection of Pendulum State is coming out on gold vinyl. So it's going to be the performance is definitely going to have that bonus track from Pendulum State included in the performance. And there might be a bit of like Irish trad thrown in there too, and a couple of covers and things like that. But a good time.
Do you have any tips for cyclists in general who want to get into longer tours? I mean, I know it's a different subject now, but
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I hear a lot of people talk, well, I want to go on a tour, but then they think, oh, it's something you have to do in retirement or something like that, you know?
No, I mean, get started. Like, there's nothing wrong with starting by doing like a weekend overnighter, you know, like go away for 3 days. Especially if you're living in Edmonton. I mean, you've got Elk Island Park 50 kilometers away. That's a great hike, you know? And then, you know, why not just be adventurous about how you visit all the rest of your people in your life? Like if you have friends 300 kilometers away, maybe you're going to cycle to visit them instead. Like you don't have to break off an enormous chunk like the second largest continent in the world or whatever country, like cycling across Canada. You can do it as large or as little as you want. So I would say just don't overthink it. You'll learn pretty quick within the first 24 hours of being on the bike.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm. Can you share a personal story from one of your tours that left a lasting impact on you?
The quickest one that jumped in my head there, I have 3 that I typically tell, but everything changed last year when I was cycling through Europe. I had just started my European dates. I'd played a bunch of Irish ones already. My mum had a stroke in the middle of it, and I had to fly back from the Netherlands to Dublin and visit her. And 3 weeks later, I had to cancel the rest of my shows because she had died. So
I hear that.
Yeah, so that was really rough. I never needed cycling so badly though. Like I was staying with a concert host who had given me a show in Leiden with another Canadian band called Rumour Mill. I was staying with his mum and we were at the venue that morning. Yeah, I just cycled with him to. Hi, doggy. I cycled with him to his mum's house so I could stay there while I was doing everything, and it's just the strangest sensation to be cycling with a near perfect stranger, with that going through your system, and every rotation of your pedals is like a lifeline. Do you know, it's just like the motion of it and the wind in your face and the breathing. Everything is just keeping you anchored into the here and now and stopping your head going like insane. So yeah, that's probably the most life-changing story that's happened to me so far while cycling. But yeah, and I mean, there's always a silver lining to everything. As a result of that, I ended up having to abandon Charlie, who's my bike, and Bob, the trailer, in the Netherlands with a host family. And this April, I went back with my dad with my mum's car, and we took the ferry over and we went and played a bunch more shows with my fiddle player Heidi, and we went back to retrieve Charlie from the Netherlands so that I can cycle again this summer. So it was a great opportunity to travel with my dad. He came as our roadie and our tour manager, so it was great. So.
Your dad's in Ireland?
Yeah, my whole family's in Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, my parents and my sister, they're in Germany still. I miss them a lot because, you know, I don't get to travel there every year, and they're now in their 80s. Before we conclude, would you like to add anything?
I don't know. I would just like to say thank you to all of the families and concert hosts that hosted me over the last 2 years. It's been absolutely life-changing. To all the women watching, if you are contemplating anything like this, there's a great Facebook group, Bicycle Traveling Women, that you should check out, full of resources there. They pretty much like helped me out with all the major stuff. And don't be shy to like reach out to the people who have done things like this and go hard asking them questions. That's what I did. I interviewed so many people who have done it before me. Just do something that scares you every day, right? And if that's cycling a long distance, then there you go.
I'd like to thank you for coming out. It was a surprise when you messaged me. You know, I was like, I don't have any real connection to music, except I sometimes create my music on iPad with GarageBand and stuff,
yeah.
you know, for the videos, and
Nice.
it always turns out kind of silly, but it's so much fun. So I guess I shouldn't say I don't have a connection to music, because, you know, and like now having heard you and stuff, I'd love to attend one of your concerts someday. Won't promise when it is, you know, but will probably happen to be in the same area at some point or another. I mean, you're from Edmonton. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd love that.
So
Yeah.
check out her channel too on YouTube. She has a channel. I'll leave a link in the description, and give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to her channel. And I'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.